So it's my pleasure to welcome everybody on this call today. I can see people are still coming in. And today we're going to have a very special uh, discussion around transition and succession, but in the whole context of a couple who have worked together for some time. They'll describe themselves, how they came to work together, having first of all had different professional tracks. But just to take a step backwards, the Elders Council for Social Entrepreneurs interests itself, of course, in all aspects of work in social entrepreneurship, particularly relating to transition, relating to succession, the whole question of how social entrepreneurs and their boards work together so that individuals can either head into what you might call classical retirement or head into working in different ways for their own organizations, how CEOs can be brought on if the founder is there. And there are so many different stories. In fact, I think as co-founders, that's Mel Young, Andrea Coleman, and myself, as co-founders, we have found that no story is alike. And the story of how social entrepreneurs make their transition is incredibly individual. And that's what we're going to find today. So it's my pleasure to just quickly outline the meeting today. I'll hand over to Andrea Coleman in a second, who will be moderating our session today. And she will then work with Neelam and Jacob, who are going to be our speakers today. And they'll be discussing and talking together for approximately half an hour. And then Andrea will open the session to our audience today. Mel, the third co-founder, will wrap up the session at the top of the hour. So without further ado, I want to hand over to Andrea, who of course is the founder of Riders for Health. And as she has pointed out at the top of this session, she began this organization with her husband, Barry, who is on the call today, and warm welcome to you, Barry. She then went on to create Two Wheels for Life, and so she herself has had this transition story more than once. Andrea, may we hand over to you?
Yes, thank you, Chris. Yes, hello to everyone. It's great to see so many people here for this talk with Jacob and Neelam. The title of this event, of course, is Who Are You If You're Not Your Organization? And I think so many people find when they move on from senior positions in particular, or something that they put their life into, that when they move on, it's very difficult to remember even who you are and who you are without your organization or without the entity that you've put your life into. So we know that that's very difficult. We also know I know from my own personal experience of founding Riders for Health together with my husband, Barry Coleman, that people move on at different times. It's quite a strain on people, but somehow we've managed to come through it, and indeed so have Jacob and Neelam. So I'd love to introduce you to Jacob Mathew and Neelam Chhiber, and they're going to tell you a bit about what their organizations are and their story of transition. So over to you, Neelam.
Hi, thank you so much. And I think this is one of the joys of being a part of Catalyst 2030, that one gets remembered for all the fantastic work that some of the groups there do. And I'm so happy to be here and lovely to see so many people who've come and to hear whatever we have to say. I'm Neelam Chhiber. I'm the co-founder of Industree Foundation. My co-founder, Mrs. Geeta Ram, is 80 this year, and I'm 61 this year. And Jacob and I started working together in 2013, which is 10 years ago, because I really felt that I needed more support within Industree Foundation. Industree works at the intersection of equity, climate, and gender. We work on economic resilience of women, and we help them build collectives and grow their livelihoods in climate positive value chains. So we do this in India, and we've done some work in Africa, which has been spearheaded completely by Jacob. I had nothing to do with it, very little, except he used the industry platform. We are both designers. We are both industrial designers from the National Institute of Design, and we actually studied together. But we did not have a relationship when we were design students. It's very important to share. So we actually had vowed we'd never work together, because we knew it would be really bad for the marriage, because we arranged our marriage maybe 5 years after or 10 years after design school. Right. Yeah. 6, 7 years after design school, because in India, we all hear about the arranged marriage, right? And we decided to arrange our own marriage. And a key decision taken was we would never work together. But we did start to work together over the last 10 years, and that's a bit about us. And over to you, Jacob.
I think, well, I had a separate career from Neelam. I ended up setting up one of the first independent design offices in Bangalore. And then about 20 years down the road, decided to scale it. So went through a very rapid scale journey from something like 20 people in the organization to 250 in something like 2 months. Sorry, not in 2 months, 20 months, I'm sorry. Which is quite, and learning from a lot of people in that process. And as designers, we tend so much to identify with our work, our portfolio of work, and so on. A lot of the work that I was doing then was in retail. Retail is ephemeral in the sense that you create a retail experience, and usually in 5 to 7 years, it is changed. Sometimes you are the person who does the change. Sometimes it's another organization or another consultant who does the change. So I got used to the idea that, your work and your identity cannot be the same, because your work is so ephemeral. It's like, writing on the beach and the waves wash it out. I think the other thing about work being ephemeral was having our parents live with us and, in a sense, die with us. Neelam's father, my father, and my mother all died at home, in our home. And my mother, for instance, used to work in Singapore, and she was hired by the first chief minister, the first, who became the bureaucrat who became the first prime minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew. That was her boss. And she had a wonderful career as a civil servant in Singapore. But in the later years, she died when she was 99 years and 9 months old. And in the later years, what really mattered was her ability. She'd become a child again. She was happiest when she was with little kids, and she felt she was a little kid. She would be singing to them, and so on. It sort of brings you thinking about death, thinking about what matters in a sense. And I think having parents age with us and then pass on. Neelam's mum, touch wood, is going strong at 92. She lives with us. But you get a sense of what really matters in life. When you face your parents go through old age and then death. I'd just like to share I think we decided our scale journey when we started our scale journey in the design consultancy that I was running at that time. It used to be called Tesseract Design. There were 4 of us partners. Tesseract means it's a cube in the 4th dimension. We had to merge our firm with another firm in order to grow. And we decided that we would drop our names. I'd taken 20 years to build a reputation around Tesseract. The firm that I was merging with was maybe 10 years younger than us, but they had spent 10 years making their firm. And we merged it and we came up with a new name. because we said that, look, that was in the past. Now we have to look at the future. So this whole thing of, changing, turning pages and moving on is something that we've sort of gotten used to. So when we set up the organization, this new organization, it was called Idiom. The first meeting was on vision and mission setting. Our second meeting was about succession. And there were 7 of us who were co-founders. And we decided that we have to pass on the reins of running the company in 5 years to the next generation. And to be able to do that, we had to do a whole process of creating levels in the company, progression ladders, and then start training people to move from one rung of the ladder to the next rung of the ladder. So when I came into Industree, when Neelam invited me to work in Industree, one of the things that I said is that, what are you doing for your succession? And this was 10 years ago. And I had decided that I would retire when I was 50, because my dad had retired when I was 52, and I wanted to beat him at that. So anyway, yeah, over to you, Andrea.
Yes, I love the idea, Jacob, of you're the first person to bring in this very important issue of how we approach death and how that reflects on the point we're at, and how you get to the real core of how you should go forward once you're moving on from work and that busy part of life. And we keep on mentioning during our eldership conversations that it's really something that we really have to talk about, and everybody steers away from it all the time. So thank you so much for bringing in that perspective. That's really, really helpful. And also almost building succession into your work plan is something right from the beginning, is really something we keep on finding is so important, because otherwise you get to a point where you just think you're going to be in charge of everything forever, and you kind of just can't let go. So at what point, Neelam, are you in that process of succession from Industree, and how does that feel?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to call out that if I am doing anything about my succession, it's because of a very, very, very strong spiritual practice. So Jacob has called out death. I'm calling out birth, because when Industree was set up, I was 28. I was 32. Yeah. But I'd been doing the work I do at Industree since the age of 22. So for me, my work was who I was. So it defined me. I mean, exactly what you said. To me, it was a huge crisis. What am I without my organization? Because I'd lived and breathed, and I see a lot of young people today. I'd had existential crisis when I was like 20 in design school. My work had pulled me out of everything. So if anything was truly significant in my life, it was my work. And then obviously it was my family, right? And then it was my children, and then it was my parents. And the most critical thing about work was the fact that we get so much energy from the communities we work with. We get phenomenal energy from meeting the people on the field. And that's what makes us tick every day. And that's what has made us tick all these years, in all the ups and downs, crisis after crisis, cash flow, salaries going late, funds not being there, all sorts of sweat and panic that we have undergone, right? For 30 years, since this was founded in 32, and this is now 22. So that's, 84, 32, whatever are the years. But it's been endless. There have been endless days of panic in the early years, right? And even I would say till the last 3 or 4 years ago. And now I feel deeply satisfied that we are at a position where we are scaling well. And I believe we are leaving something secure for the next generation. And that gives enormous peace and ability to also let go, because you're not handing over a bucket full of crises to anyone, right? That is very important. But it's like exactly what you said. Not what you said, what I'm saying is that the amount of passion one has put into it, where does all that go? You know? And for that, I believe the only help has been the spiritual practice. So about a year ago, it's serendipitous. And it is also because I really felt that I wouldn't be able to do this if I didn't do more self-work. Because frankly, a successor for the work we do has to be multiple people. It cannot be one person. It's because we've just, as entrepreneurs, built it up from scratch, multitask so tremendously at a much smaller scale. And at a large scale, where there are so many multiple tasks going on simultaneously, which have to be done with high levels of governance, because the scrutiny at this size and scale is so much higher, and the entrepreneurial freedom is missing. So you are leaving an organization which cannot actually be dealt so comprehensively by one person, but there has to be a leader. So the succession plan we have is, it's a co-org, it's a cooperative organization, because we worked with collectives all our lives. So the first instance was that we have a strong second level leadership. So we've got about 12, 13 leaders. Some are senior leaders, some are middle level leaders, some are junior leaders. So we've worked very hard over the last 2-3 years. My dad retired when he was 58. So I told my teams, 58, boss, I have to go, right? And they said, oh my God, no, give us 2 years. So we said, okay, 2 years. We hired an HR consulting firm who worked with these leaders for 18 months, coaching, mentoring. And then from there, one CEO, it just became very clear to me. The board said that you cannot, I mean, your collaborative leaders are not going to go in a bunch and meet donors, are they? Everybody is going to ask for one person. So you have to pinpoint one person in this collab of leadership. So we have one CEO, yeah, and that's where the spiritual connection and the CEO come in. Because obviously the CEO who will get selected will be a person who complements me, who does stuff well that I sucked at. Obviously, that's the person. That's the way the water flows, right? So obviously he's different from me. And we have to, I mean, I have to mentor this person and I have to give him importance. He's going to be the primary one, not me. So I needed to work on myself to deal with the differences, because I'm not going to expect him to change. I have to change. So I have been going for daily spiritual practice to make myself, to put my ego down, for me to become a different person. And that's the only way the transition is happening, frankly. I'm putting it on the table. Yeah, so I'll stop now.
I think that's the most wonderful description of succession, Neelam. It's a real privilege to hear you talking about that, because, you know, I think so many of us are sort of not ashamed exactly, but we find it very difficult to express the difficulties our organizations go through. You know, as you say, that the cash flows, the panics, the paying the wages late and so on. But to hear you talk about that, it's one of the reasons I think that we become so attached to our organizations, because we've managed to get it through and over all those challenges. And then you're talking about how about your ego and how can you let that go? But I think it's really critical, the point you make, that you're not handing over a bag of chaos. You feel you've got it to that point. I know that Mel and Chris and I had a discussion recently about it's hard to let go when you feel there's still so much more to do, that you look at the world and feel there's still so much we need to do, but to find that you've found a good place to be able to hand that over and think about yourself and how you manage that. What do you think about as it were the word retirement, as opposed, I know you've mentioned that both your parents both retired early. What does that mean to you about what you do next?
Jacob, you want to go? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll need some backup from you on the stages of retirement. But, retirement is, in a sense, shifting gears and doing something else. Yeah, it's not that you just stop working and you become redundant, or you retire to your bed and or retire into a study and read. That is something that I would like to do, but anyway, I have a lot of catching up on reading to do. But again, I'll just look at a couple of things about preparing for retirement, and one is cleaning up anything that could become a potential mess. And again, I'll just take a page from my father's life again. He split his property and gave us, we are 4 brothers, and gave 3 of us our inheritances. My eldest brother had to wait because his inheritance was the house that they lived in. But I think we were 30 when we received our inheritance from our living parents. And that really eased things for us. We used the money to build a house in which our children grew up. And at 31 or 32, we had our own house, which is a big deal. It actually gave us the freedom to take a lot of the risks that we wanted to take. So I think one thing about preparing for retirement is clean up the mess so that people who come after you can focus on the job and not cleaning up after you. The second is, and I think I'll take help from Neelam here, on the Indian system of the different phases of life. So can you help me with that, Brahmacharya?
So one of the subjects in school, a topic I never have forgotten, I've forgotten a lot of what I learned in school, is the 4 stages of the of life in traditional Indian culture. So the first is your youth. Yeah. That's 20 years, first 20, 25 years, whichever way you want to look at it, is your youth, where you're single. It's called Brahmacharya Ashram. And the second is when you study, etc., etc., and you are celibate. Brahmacharya means celibacy. The second is Grihastha Ashram. You're in the house. You're a householder. You have a family. You bring everyone up. You do all your worldly duties. That's the next 20, 25 years. The third stage is called Sannyas Ashram. So Jacob and I are in Sannyas Ashram, meaning you move away from worldly life, you move away from your householder duties, but you are available. You are available for advice, for mentorship, for guidance. So that's how we have to look at ourselves, that we are available and anybody can come to us for guidance and we are there. Yeah. So we haven't left. Family members will come to us, office people, anybody. See, we all treat our office as family. Otherwise, we wouldn't do the work we do, because you can't just do it as work, right? That's one of the first things about social entrepreneurship. So we are there very much. We haven't gone anywhere. The last and the 4th stage is called Vanaprastha Ashram, meaning you've gone to the forest. Vana means forest. So you are not available. So after whatever, you can decide it's 70, whatever, 80, whatever, right? You are not available. You're in the forest. You are not available to anyone. That's when you go deep into your spiritual work. And you are then trying to not be reborn in your next life. But the other thing we've learned about spiritual work is you don't start spiritual work when you're 70 or 60. The sooner you start spiritual work, the better it is for you. But it's also very tough to take it up if you're older. So that's the 4 stages, and that's something that has influenced me all my life a lot. And I'm so happy. I want to call out that the CEO is on the call. I'm so happy to see him here. Very happy. Yeah.
I think, in this journey of moving from stage to stage, when I joined, when Neelam actually invited me to join Industree, it was very difficult initially, because until then I had been used to being the boss in my organization. I've been an entrepreneur all my life. My final project in college was about becoming a design entrepreneur. And, moving from being an entrepreneur to, a sort of an employee in an organization was not an easy transition. And our organization can bear witness to the bitter arguments that we would have in full view of everybody about how things had to be done. It took me some years, actually, probably about 6 years, to figure out that, what my role was. And, understanding that my role was actually to be the wind under her wings kind of thing, and not be the leading edge. And that is something that I've took some time to learn. And people around us suffered a lot because of that. At least their ears were damaged because of the loud arguments we would have. And today I find that my role is, in a sense, preparing the ground for Neelam's Vanaprasthashram and her Sannyas Ashram. Sannyas Ashram and then Vanaprastha Ashram, including having to pull up our roots from Bangalore right now, where we've been living for the last 40 years, and shifting to another state, to another place where I'm actually building a house that we'll move to. So we are also out of sight, so that we become a little out of mind for the office. Yeah. So
don't move to the forest yet, Jacob.
Sorry.
We need you. Well, these are all wonderful things, and of course, Barry and I have been well known for having, stand-up shouting fights in the middle of everything as well. So I must say, I'm delighted that we weren't the only ones to do that. And obviously, there are some really clear issues here around how you prepare in terms of money, both from your parents allowing you to have that freedom, and also having the money within industry to bring in a consultancy to help you through. So there are money issues here that are so critical. I think it's time to open this to the floor. There are people I know who would like to ask you questions, and I think Linda, am I right, Chris, in saying Linda is the first one here?
Sure. Linda has certainly made a couple of very helpful comments. Linda, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you very much. This is my first webinar that I'm attending, and it was one that for me was very relevant as a social entrepreneur. I'm 66, I live in South Africa, and run a company called 50 Plus Skills. So the work I do is around helping people transition from their professional life into the next chapter in a longevity world. And the question that I want to thank you very much, some of your thoughts and ideas are very helpful. But I think, and I think you mentioned it as well, is as a passionate social entrepreneur, it's quite difficult to separate ourselves from that passion and to let go, even though we know for the sake of the longevity of an organization, it's necessary. So just kind of honing in on that specific one, the passion as a social entrepreneur, what would you advise? I know you have given us some ideas, but some more would be helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. See, I just want to say, because frankly, I went for spiritual practice today, so it all comes from there, that, we believe as social entrepreneurs that we are the only ones who are going to solve this problem. Well,
Yeah.
I should think we all should be very happy to hear that that's not the case, right? There is a universe, there is a larger theory of change at play, and things will get sorted. Yes, we were born on this earth to spend our time properly, and we have done it, right? And now it's time to allow others who are in the organization to spend their time on earth properly, right? And they have been doing it all these years as it is. They've been part of the organization, right? So I just think that most successful or quasi-successful or partially successful, whatever we want to call ourselves, social entrepreneurs, are people who are egoistic. We are strong people. We are strong-willed people with strong egos, and we are also nice people with empathy, which is why we do what we do. But we've really got to understand that the world is not waiting for us to do everything. We have to let go. I think that is a very key piece of this. And it is very important also when we let go to our successors in the organization. We have to be available to them, but we have to understand that we cannot be pulling strings from the back and manipulating from the back and juggling. Like I was just reading some article. See, because the organization is very clear. They're like, you can't just leave us and go. I mean, my CEO said after one meeting, I'm so relieved that I'm not going to be hung up to dry. These were his exact words, which is the truth. I mean, it's not as though overnight everyone's miraculously going to take charge. So they need our support, but that's all they need. So there's a lot of wisdom that we have to use in how we support them. And we are not going to always be successful. I mean, we can be wise just so much. So having a channel of good communication with the team you are succeeding to, that if there's something that I'm saying that's really, if it looks like I'm interfering, tell me. And we have to be able to listen. When someone tells you on your face, look, I don't like what you said, we get upset. It is a reality. It is the truth. So then we have to learn how not to get upset, right? And that's what it is. I am, I think, one of the luckiest people that the teams that we have, there is a lot of transparency and a lot of say it like you want it, say it like you feel about it. And we all have to learn to sort out our own issues in our own ways, which we all do. Yeah. But there has to be the freedom of expression if there has to be a proper succession. Because I cannot be on the board and everyone's saying, delineate what you do, what your successor does. And my successor is saying, look, how many more silos are we going to create? First of all, let's succeed in the succession, right? So we get a lot of great advice, but it's up to us instinctively. So I'm not delineating right now what does the board, and I'm not even chairman of the board, by the way, right? So a lot of people will say that you succeed and become the chairman of the board, and then you have a CEO. But then the chairman of the board is not going to pull the strings of the CEO. It's not going to work. You're going to have a complete failed situation there, right? So we have to really like he said, be the wind within their wings. Frankly, we need the successors more than the successors need us. It's really as simple as that. The day that is understood, succession is very easy. Yeah, it's not
great advice.
Yeah. It's not that we are paying someone a salary and it's a great salary and they're the CEO. Now they have to listen to us. No, we need them more than they need us. It is the reality.
I think there's also something to be said for the person who's being succeeded. And it's that it ain't over yet. It's not that once you've been succeeded, your life is over. Yeah, and everything, and there's nothing more to look forward to. Because I mean, the experience and the wisdom that you gain, running an organization and working with people all these years, it's a very valuable experience. And I think, Linda, I mean, the work that you're doing, 50 plus, I'm sure is looking at some of those. And I mean, I'd just like to share an experience that I had. I was consulting for a large retail firm, and we required to find 17 business CEOs in a very short period of time. And my client had been to the biggest headhunting firms on the planet. I think Egon Zehnder and another one. And they couldn't find the CEOs that he wanted. We did a search in his organization, and we organized something like the Shark Tank or one of those things, and ran some competitions, entrepreneurial competitions, and we were able to fill in about 12 of the 17 positions through this system. And these were young people. Some were, I think the youngest was 22, and the oldest was, I think, 50. Now, these people could have made a mess of what they were handling. So we reached out to people who had retired from, fast-moving consumer goods businesses, and then paired up these youngsters with these experienced older people. I think in the first year of this program, I think it clocked increase in turnover of close to, I think, 200 crore.
Mm.
Yeah.
$20 million, yeah. $25 million.
It was this combination of experience with youth and the energy of youth that worked. Yeah.
Experiential dividend is what I call it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. We have Mahadi Halasa on the call too. She's the leader of Riders for Health Lesotho, and Barry and I have become somebody you can just go to if you need support. So I know Mahadi has experienced this, but I just add to what you're saying about how much time it takes. That you were saying, Jacob, that it took 6 years for you to understand who you were and what your role was. And I know it's taken me that long, moving from CEO and founder to another role. And I think we have to all be patient and let that time pass and really concentrate on learning who you are as well. Is there anyone else who'd like to come in at this particular moment to ask questions or make a comment or anything?
Most welcome. Do come in.
Mahadi, maybe you'd like to say how it feels to be, as it were, on the other end of becoming the leadership. I don't know if you'd feel comfortable with that.
I think for me it's a bit different, because I consider myself very lucky. I've had the support of the founders from the beginning, and even as the transition is happening, I really rely on them so much, and I feel like the support I'm getting, I don't know if I could have managed without the support I'm getting from the founders. So for me, I think as much as the transition is happening, there'll never be a time where the founders of the organization are completely out of the picture, because even as we expand and include other areas in our work, because this was their initial vision, they always have the insight, and they're able to support and help the organization to grow and to make sure that we continue to reach our goals.
By the way, I haven't paid Mahadi to say such nice things. It's completely her own volition. Anyone else who'd like to come in here? Thank you, Mahadi. Sorry to put you on the spot. Just while we're waiting for other questions, I'd just like to ask you both what you think about when you think you start to prepare, as it were, the financial pot of money to kind of get you through that transition. About, you were able to bring in consultants, and I suppose this also links to whether donors and investors in our organizations should really be starting to think about investing in succession and transition, or if people already do that. I don't know what your experience is. Have you any comments to make on that?
Yeah, yes, I do believe that the external help we have got is extremely beneficial. We also, my CEO, I think his announcement will be made publicly later in October, internally to the organization. It was already announced in the first week of September. This is a very high-end global HR firm, and the board has played a very large role. There's also one of my board members on the call right now. The board has seen to it that there was a very detailed process that we went through, because this is going to be about what happens for the next person and the next person, because it's not as though these organizations are going to wind up in the next 5 years, 10 years, who knows? They're going to be around, hopefully, right? And so having board members and advisors who are more corporate is helpful, because then you are growing your organization in a corporate style, but with a social entrepreneurial ethos. Having a blend of the two has been very useful. And I do feel going forward, donors are taking cognizance. There is a lot of conversation around unrestricted funding. And I do believe that some of the more mature, so I'll be very frank, we are in the reckoning for some rather large grants. And that was one of the key things the donors asked, that what is the succession plan, right? And actually, originally, we were supposed to make the announcement of the succession in March. That's the end of the financial year for us. But we preponed it to October, because we've announced to these specific donors that, yes, this is the succession plan. And we have a new CEO, right? And so I hope that answers your question. And yes, if you were smaller and you had to do it, I mean, we are not a very large organization, right? We employ 150 people, 180 people. But yes, we will be, I would assume, a 250-person organization in like a year's time. That's the kind of growth that's happening. And I do believe that I have been able to do this in a very organized way, frankly, because of the two leadership programs I attended. I attended a leadership program in 2007-8. It was called Social Impact International, which then was called the Dasra Social Leadership Program, which is now discontinued. And my CEO is going to meet Dasra on the 6th and talking about resurrecting that program for the teams coming in. So a lot of programs for organizations like us that will coach and build not just our next level, but their next level, right? So one of the first questions one of the board members asked our CEO when he met him face to face in the like 2-3 months ago was, who is your successor going to be? Who are you going to train from day one, right? And things like that, right? So this is the corporate approach, and getting the best practices of corporate approach into our sector is very critical, extremely critical. And there is a lot of help available there. And by the way, I want to call out our peers, not our peers, because these are Indian organizations larger than us, like maybe double our size or triple our size. I reach out to them and I say, give me advice. How are you doing it? And I think it's really amazing. And I want to call out Catalyst 2030 on this. The fact that Catalyst 2030 has brought a lot of social entrepreneur leaders together on a very person-to-person, face-to-face footing, right? We are just not abstract. So it helps having these peer networks. And I do believe that even within Catalyst 2030, this building of a peer network of the next level is important. It's super important, because these are the people who are going to, and frankly, I hope my CEO doesn't feel crazed about it. But the next award that Industry Foundation gets should be in his name or in the team's name. There can be no further award ever given to me. I don't want it. And these are the kinds of things that the Scholes and the Schwabs of the world have to start considering. Where are the awards for the next level of social entrepreneurs? Because I think it's phenomenally brave for a successor to take on someone's mandate, right? It's phenomenal that you can, from its ethos, try to step into someone's shoes and try. And it's just, it's so much of mental strength that you say that someone's done work for 30 years and I will build upon it, right? I will take this to the next level. So that needs to be awarded. Things like that. I think as a complete ecosystem, we have to build the rungs for succession.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you, and it just makes me think. I'd love to talk to Chris and Mel later about. We should have a session with the people who have taken over from founders, and just to hear what they're saying, to think about their pathway and their succession. So that's really a wonderful description of the situation. Thank you, Neelam, so much. Is there anyone else who'd like to come in at the moment? Yes, please.
Hi, this is Ravi Chandran. I'm in the board of
Hi.
Industree. Yeah, hi. I think just want to reiterate what Neelam was talking about. That I think both the board and she and Jacob has been thinking about this succession question for over 3 years. And I remember joining the board year and a half back, and I think already those discussions were in a fairly advanced stage. And I also liked what Neelam said. It is not the new person who's coming in. We need him more than that person needs the job, because we obviously need leadership. Refresh needs to keep happening. And just wanted to assure all of you that there is a huge amount of involvement from the board in terms of the process, into process of selection, process of transition, and to make sure that all the stakeholders feel comfortable, and just not the employees of the organization and the board, but can all of you here and all the donors. And so there is a very elaborate kind of thinking going on in ensuring them that the fundamental ethos and DNA of the company will not change and will continue to basically live up to the kind of standards set by the founders. And so just wanted to highlight that we are actively involved in this kind of transition period.
Thank you so much for joining that. I mean, it's wonderful to hear. We very rarely get anyone from a social enterprise board speaking. It's very rare. And so we're delighted to hear what you have to say about it, and very proud to hear about all your work. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who'd like to contribute or ask a question while we still have Neelam and Jacob for another 5 or 10 minutes?
Yeah, Andrea, we had a comment from Mukti a little earlier. Mukti Bosco.
Mukti, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I was just the comment that I was making is the journey that Neelam and Jacob went through is fabulous, and to be able to spiritually be connected and do the transition and be around to be able to support and mentor. The question that I wanted to ask is, after the mentoring, what would happen if the founder moves away? Complete clean exit.
Yeah, I'll jump in on
what I hear is most of the founders who have moved on, but they're staying on for some more time and they possibly have a board role? That is one question. And the second question, what do you do after you move on?
Yeah. So on the first one, I'll just say that I don't think donors are even ready right now in our sector to see the founder move on 100%. I don't think they're ready. Yeah, because that feeling and that trust that because they are funding us for the future based on the history of the work. So that trust level is not there, that the successor, I would think. Yeah. So I think it's an ecosystem issue there. And I'll jump to your second thing as to what do we do if we make the cut completely. Is that right, Mukti? Because if we haven't made the cut completely,
when you make the cut, or even otherwise, because your role within the organization is much lesser.
Yes, yes.
Both ways. What do you do? Because you are identified with your organization.
Yeah.
That's your identity.
So that was exactly what I was sharing earlier, Mukti, that I feel a strong spiritual practice is very critical. I wouldn't be sitting here talking so confidently if it wasn't for that. I'll be very frank. And I would actually be saying a lot of fake things, which I may still be saying. It's quite possible. But Neju, who's the CEO, he's on this call. Chris asked me, what's his name? Shall I ask him to speak? Anyway, so Neju actually said in one of the meetings with the mentor and the coach, we all had a meeting, all four of us. He said, you know what? I'm not that concerned about myself and all the issues that I have to take on when I become the CEO. I'm concerned, by the way, he's the only person in the organization who calls me ma'am. He's the only person. Nobody else calls me ma'am. And that's not why he's been made CEO. But he said that I am very concerned about what will happen to ma'am after October, right? Or after April. Yeah. She is going to be very lost. What is she? He was really concerned. He said, I'm concerned about her mental health. Right. So yes, we have to work on it. Right. And after that meeting, and I told my entire team, they all know about this. I stepped out and I actually felt one big vacuum in the pit of my stomach. And and the vacuum was not loss of power or loss of anything. Because frankly, I've stopped looking at cash flow for the last 3 years. I'm lousy at cash flow. I read my profile where 3 years ago, 5 years ago, where it clearly said you can do anything but never handle cash. So the first thing when Neju came on was, I said, Neju, please, you look at the cash. He's been handling cash flow for 3 years in any case, right? So I've been having more and more reduced role in any of those kind of decisions in the organization for 3 years. So I'm used to it. The pit in my stomach was that I would not have such a direct connect with my teams anymore. I will have, of course, but it is true, right? I cannot just peremptorily pick up the phone just because I have some thought and say XYZ to anyone. You've got to manage yourself better, right? It's not that someone has told me not to, but that's what the situation is going to demand. So we as human beings have to sort out for ourselves, Mukti, right? What we are doing for ourselves. And we have to calm down and say that the organization will be fine. Every brilliant idea I have can be put on the back burner till there is a strategy meeting that will be held and we can talk about it then. So we have to really change the way we work, our style of working. And I really recommend spiritual practice for it. And of course, have your hobbies. And of course, try to create a little bit of physical distance, which we are doing. We will move to Goa. We will come to Bangalore once every 10, 15 days, spend a week with the team and go off. We may stop doing that after a while, whatever. And definitely in terms of role, Mukti, because the organization is at a scale position, I have the role of looking at the larger picture, looking at, next level donors, just thinking about that, right? Whilst my CEO manages more of the immediate operations, scale-up operations, which are going to be huge. Then he will start his global travel with me. Then he will be introduced to the global world of donors and he will take on that role from me. It'll take him 2-3 years to get there. Things like that, right? So there will be a step off, and hopefully in that time, we will be advanced enough to let the organization go 100%. Yeah.
And during that time,
That's wonderful. So sorry, carry on. We've just got 3 more minutes, and Mel needs to do his wrap up. And so just everybody's missed having, if you've missed having your opportunity to talk to Neelam and Jacob, please just know that it's been a wonderful session. Jacob, just quickly carry on with what you were saying.
No, I was saying that during that time, I have to ensure, in a sense, that Neelam shifts from being driver to supporter. Yeah, and that's a big shift to make.
Yeah. It's a big shift, and I've been through it myself, so I know it's a big shift. But thank you both so much for your wisdom and honesty. We're just so honoured to have you both here. Mel, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Andrea, and thank you very, very much, Neelam and Jacob. That was a fascinating discussion. I can't believe that an hour's gone already. There was so much of this, so many pearls of wisdom, if you like, that you've shared with us. And as Andrea says, incredibly grateful. Just in terms of I think there's no particular conclusion coming here, but tons of pearls of wisdom which are so relevant to us as social entrepreneurs. And this is, as we've said before many times in these webinars, the social entrepreneur journey is still relatively new. The concept of social entrepreneurs is what, 30 years old or something like this. And there's so many of us now arriving at this point where we're talking about succession and moving on. So all of this is kind of very, very relevant. But some of the insights I thought were really good that I would just maybe want to mention that I think we hadn't talked about before. In particular, the one you mentioned there, Neelam, about in terms of succession, you had to work on yourself as to be a successor, somebody who's bringing somebody else on. And we've always talked before about the person that's arriving rather than working on ourselves to be that good person who can bring on a successor. So that was a very interesting insight. I thought also from Jacob, I love the words kind of retirement is clearing up the mess before moving on. I thought that was very interesting as well, because so many times I think we can move on and, you know, as we all know, the cash flows and the spreadsheets and the paying the wages late and so on, we all can empathize with that immediately. But it's all about making sure that that's not the case when the successor comes along, so that in point of fact, the successor can grow and not feel that they're stepping into somebody's shoes, that there's a nice space that's organized and ready that they can take on. So I thought that was very interesting as well. Also, the point I think that building on Linda's point that I think you said, Neelam, which is also true, is that we at Social Entrepreneurs think we're the only people who can sort the world out. And sometimes the way the world is at the moment, with its kind of celebrity culture, society makes us think we are, that's it, we're the only people. And actually that's not true. And you emphasize that point. You know, the world will sort itself out. We can't sort all these huge issues out on our own. So it's a question of being the people that we are, making our inputs, trying to create the organization to be in a sustainable place so that our successors can come on and they can take on the mantle, others can join in, and then we create the change. And, you know, the kind of let's succeed on succession, I think is so important. And you also said we need the successors more than the successors need us. So it's about kind of us kind of understanding. And I think from us, from a Western perspective, I've not heard of these kind of 4 stages of life before, and I'm sure others on the call maybe haven't as well. But I think that that's so interesting about the roles that we actually have as founders, as social entrepreneurs, and then that relationship with our successors and building the organization and hence changing the world as we move on is so important. And thinking in that way, I think is really, really helpful, because I know so many social entrepreneurs end up getting stuck in their organizations, feeling guilty about moving, feeling unwilling to move because of the the role that they have and so on. So the whole bit about that we're in that third stage available for advice and so on at the moment, I think, whatever kind of age we're at. And then finally, you know, I think it was really another insight was just recognizing, and I get the exact words I've written down, but how brave it is for a successor to move into the shoes of a founder who's moving on. And we should recognize that. And in terms of the ecosystem that you mentioned, in terms of where social entrepreneurship is going globally with all the Schwabs and the Shokas and so on and so forth around the place, to recognize that new tier that's emerging and supporting that and recognizing that and recognizing this ecosystem of moving on, and the succession actually just becomes part of everything that they were doing, which comes right back to the beginning when I think, Jacob, you mentioned that, or both of you talked about how succession actually was discussed in an early part of your journey, and not as for many social entrepreneurs at the moment, they suddenly start thinking about it far too late. So it starts to become part of the kind of whole ecosystem of social entrepreneurship sport. The succession for longer term sustainable organizations is there from the outset. So I haven't done justice, I don't believe, to this discussion, and I can't, because there was just so many, I would call, pearls of wisdom, just brilliant insights from you both, and some great questions and discussions. And just from Chris, Andrew, and myself, I'd like to thank you so much. And obviously we'll stay in touch. And thanks everybody for joining. Good to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely having you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jacob and Neelam.
Thank you, Neelam. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, everyone.